Hi, welcome to Sparking Innovation. This is a podcast from Provisio, the largest Salesforce consultancy focused solely on human services. I'm your host, Tom Moran. Our mission on this show is to inspire nonprofits and government agencies to drive change in their communities by embracing change in their organizations. And there's no technology driving greater change today than artificial intelligence. So today we're talking about AI readiness. AI has tremendous potential to make nonprofits and government agencies more efficient and impactful. By taking over tedious tasks and revealing new insights, AI is going to free them up to focus more on the big picture decisions that really change people's lives. But you can only unleash the full potential of AI if you first develop a great data strategy with the help of a data strategy firm like Provisio. So if you work for a nonprofit or a state or local government and are interested in how Provisio can kickstart your innovation journey, contact us at provisiopartners.com. Joining me on today's episode is Provisio Managing Partner and Chief Innovation Officer Erica Cox and Provisio VP of Data Services, John Patton. Thank you guys so much for joining the show.
Thanks for having us.
Erica, what are some specific ways that nonprofits and government agencies are using AI right now to help accomplish their missions?
I think many are taking a cautious approach, just like most of the commercial spaces. Obviously, you've got people using ChatGPT to on their own, even if it's not been officially sanctioned by their organization. But one of the coolest use cases that I heard was last year at NatCon, which is a behavioral health conference. There was an organization there that was using AI to train call center staff members. So particularly for crisis call centers, the training is, as you can imagine, intense, and coming up with different training scenarios is challenging, as is finding the staff who are actually going to run those scenarios with you. So they had AI-based training scenarios that they had developed. So they were able to be, they were conversational, like chat-based, but it was a great way for them to get their staff trained with far fewer resources than they had needed before. So that was, in my mind, a really cool use case that I've seen in action.
Sure. And what about even just in the near future? What's the potential that people are talking about?
Well, I had the privilege of attending Agentforce World Tour yesterday here in Chicago. And some of the things that I know that, I heard talked about there and with our clients are really doing some propensity scoring. So how likely is someone to take the action that you'd like them to take? So whether that is how likely they are to join your program. So if they are someone who needs your services and you want to do that preliminary outreach, how likely are they to want to participate? How likely are they to donate? How likely are they to attrit from your program? So those are all really, things that are being talked about. From a generative perspective, some of the things that people are talking about and that we see really big potential for are case summaries. So, as a case manager, you get a new person on your caseload. They've been with someone else for months and months and months. How do you quickly get up to speed? What are the potential for agents who can do closeout activities? Some of those menial tasks that you have to do after you're done with a face-to-face conversation or interaction with your client. So those are some of the ideas I've heard. But John?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways, and depending on what you do inside of the organization, you're probably thinking about AI very differently. I love the initial idea of predictive AI I don't think it has been fully embraced yet, especially in things like fundraising. And then as we try to make the move and shift towards like agentic AI, trying to actually have, agents who are able to infer the meaning and contextualize and ground on the individual and help them get to where they're trying to go. Forever we've been trying to work on this idea of what's the best yes for this individual, right? Whether that's giving a gift or becoming a volunteer or receiving services and assistance. What's the best yes that we can provide for this individual? And it's always been limited by the options we had available, right? It's like if you are a gift officer, you want to get a gift. If you're a volunteer coordinator, you want to get them to volunteer, right? But I think what's exciting about where we're going and where AI is going as it becomes agentic is it can start to ground on the information that person has given you over time and try to understand where they are in that moment and try to predict where they need to go so that you can help them get to their best yes, the best way for your organization to interact with them based on the summary of all that data that you know about them. And so the use cases for that are incredibly far-reaching, and I think Erica's touched on quite a few really exciting ones. Internal staff training, external agent relationships and chatting in conversational tones directly with donors, volunteers, constituents. The future is really bright for AI in the health and human services space.
And particularly needed. I mean, of course, AI is going to help, everybody in every field. But the one thing is that in nonprofits and, in general across the human services sector is that everyone is dealing with whether it's a lack of budget or just in general, like a lack of resources, right? There's just never enough people, never enough money essentially sometimes to fully accomplish the mission in the way that you would like. And so I can just really only imagine the potential just, to have a little bit of AI help across the way is going to really make a huge difference for a lot of nonprofits out there. John, this is for you. Great AI requires great data, right? So what makes a great data strategy, and what should human services organizations be doing right now to prepare for AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, just to kind of level set for anyone listening, when you think about AI, there's different components of AI, but one of the main components of AI is LLM, large language model. And then the question is, what are you tuning that large language model? What is it looking at, right? So the most common one that you see today is ChatGPT, and it's kind of looking at the internet at large, right? So the data source is the internet. But I think what's so exciting about where this is all going is that, for the first time, you're able to actually define your data set based on your organization, right? So your systems, the data that creates, able to structure and organize and put that data into a unified data platform. And then you can push the LLM to look at that unified data platform. And so for really the first time, you're getting the power of AI, but it's on your unique data set. And so it's kind of like back in the day when you talk about attribution. It's like anyone who walks in and says, I have the perfect attribution model is lying because they've never seen your data before, right? Well, we're kind of in that same space here where the excitement is genuine, the optimism is genuine, but we are only now really starting to see what it looks like to tune an LLM to your unique data set. So what do you consider when you're trying to build out a great data strategy? You really need to think about how you're unifying your data. Where is that going? What source is that being unified in? And then you need to think about how to harmonize the data that's in that source. I'll give you an example. If I use the word impression in marketing, that means really different things in really different systems. To the person selling bus ads, that means the number of people who see the ads on the bus. To your website administrator, it means the total number of people that visited your website. They both use the word impression, but these are not the same, right? So you have to harmonize your definitions of what that data means so that the LLM can interpret that data in a way and infer meaning, the most meaningful interpretation of your data. So I would say, kind of step one is figure out where you're going to centralize your data so that you can tune the LLM to it. Step two is start to go through your data definitions and strategy for harmonization so that the LLM can give you the most effective predictions and responses to the questions you're asking of the data.
How long can this process take, right? I mean, if you're starting from ground zero, maybe you have minimal data in the first place, or you don't even know how to, fully access or even think about these things. I mean, what does that process look like to go from ground zero to even a place where you can begin to harness artificial intelligence in that way?
Yeah, great question. What I would say is this. There's this concept of technological leapfrogging. And I would say in some cases, I would almost rather start from ground zero than to unwind some of the spider web of systems that exist. It's almost easier to start and build correctly on a unified platform from the very start of it or from the very inception. What's challenging in the real world application is that many times you have multiple systems with data silos already across your organization. And so then the question becomes, how do you go through and make a decision about extracting data re-platforming to a unified platform or leaving it excluded. And you kind of have to go through and determine, based on the data and the value of the data and the decisions you want to make from that data, what are you going to do? And so, I would say it is a hero's journey. It is not for the faint of heart to start this process. But the thing that I would encourage people to do is, if you're an organization that has 15 systems, don't start with 15 systems. Start with your top 2 or 3, right? Start maybe your top 4, maybe your CRM, maybe your marketing platform. If you have, health records, maybe just a couple of these systems, and then go from there, because you're going to get value out of that really, really quickly, as compared to trying to harmonize 15 different sources.
And even of those systems, be really judicious about which pieces of them you bring, right? Because it's far easier to be additive than take things away that you determine that you don't need, that this really wasn't useful. And start with a minimal use case, right? So, and iterate upon it, because there are still areas in which, this is new technology. It's scary for many, many people. So if you start small, can prove value, can prove the efficacy, both the ROI and the accuracy, right, with logging and monitoring of what's happening, then people are going to be much less likely, then it makes sense. Then you can make the bigger investment. Then you can put more agency into it, allow it more agency, and you're going to build trust both internally and externally.
Sure. And so can you talk just a bit about the Provisio process, right? So how does Provisio help with AI readiness and developing a data strategy?
John, you want to take that one first?
That one? Is that okay?
Yeah.
I mean, so I think the first thing we really want to do is do an assessment of your current systems. And then again, we kind of have that mindset of, got to find a softer word for it, but kind of prosecuting the data is the term I've come to. Do you really need this data in the future? Is this something you're making decisions with? Or is this like a baseball card and it's just a collector's item and you're not doing anything with it, right? So we really want to go through and understand your sources, the outputs of the sources, and the usage of that data, because ideally what we're designing is something that is a pared down data set so that you can get value very quickly from it, right? If you think about kind of the law of exponential math, the more variables we put into the system, the longer it takes to get to certainty when you're starting to extract data, right? And so not that we want to keep it extremely limited or extremely narrow, but we want to make sure it's a useful set of data that you're making decisions off of. Step 1 is kind of mapping out the systems and then kind of prosecuting the data. Step 2 is building a phased approach to actually bringing that data together into a unified platform. If you don't have a good unified platform, that means you have to go procure a good unified platform that we can, tune the LLM with. And so that's number 2, is then kind of building out your phased approach for bringing those sources into that unified platform. And then phase 3 is actually activating that platform. And ideally, when we're starting to think about AI, this is a platform that is, of course, able to have that LLM referencing it, but it's also useful for your organizational needs. It would be unwise to build an AI-specific platform that couldn't hook into messaging. It would be unwise to build an AI-specific platform that couldn't give your team in the service center notes about the caller, right? So the whole idea is not to have AI for its own sake, but to have AI as it influences your organizational initiatives. That's the phases: sources, harmonize the data, put the LLM against the model, and then activate it to, run your organizational processes.
Sure. And so, Salesforce just recently unveiled its new autonomous Agentforce technology, which is really exciting in the Salesforce ecosystem here. And so it promises to be this, huge tool for nonprofits and government agencies to be more efficient and effective. So could you guys just elaborate on what Agentforce is and how human services organizations can actually be using it in the near future?
Sure, I'll take that one first. As John said earlier, this is the agentic wave of AI. So an agent is an autonomous worker, an autonomous digital worker that brings together predictive AI, generative AI, all in one place. It can really, with defined scope, and that's the really important piece, with very defined scope and clear guardrails, can either augment the work of your internal team by providing them, as John said, so summarize this case for me, as you draft a case reply based on all the data. That's where the contextual piece comes in. So imagine you've got your service worker who is fielding the call. They're easily able to, rather than trying to scan through and click and open, they're just able to ask the agent, hey, tell me about this, urgency of this case. Plain language, they get the summary. It will say, would you like me to draft a response, right? It can draft a response. You audit that response and send it back. That's one example. There's also external agents. Agents can be external. So one example is a project that we're kicked off yesterday with our client Pacific Clinics. So they are going to be using Agentforce to field questions about a really new-ish, very important program in the state of California. Right now, they're limited. They're doing outreach to people to let them know about this program for which they may be eligible. But when people call back, it's often, they have an 8 to 5 regular business hour staff. People often call back, would prefer to call back off hours because that's when most people are available to talk about things like their behavioral health. And so when they do so, they can get that agent, ask questions, be more informed about the program, give preliminary consent, and specify when would be the best time to connect with a real person and talk about the program. So I can say Friday mornings are great for me. Give me a call then. And then they can connect. So and the incredible thing about the way in which Pacific Clinics is approaching this is they want to serve more people and they want to provide better timeliness of service. But rather than looking at this as a way to limit their staff, they're looking at this as a way to give them the resources that they need to provide higher touch for those people who may have a high behavioral health acuity. And because of that, by the very nature of that, be unable to in a real way interact with the agent, but instead will need a higher touch, which could even include an in-person visit, right? So the more that the agents can take care of those people who are interested and capable of interacting in that way and kind of taking the lead in their own care and their own decisions, the more resources it frees up for those higher touch needs. So
yeah, that's really exciting. John, what's been your initial thoughts on working with Agentforce so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's very exciting. Every new release, comes with 1,000 ideas and ways it could be used, right? But as we're thinking about it, I think the most important thing is that it's grounded in the processes and the knowledge of the organization, right? You start to think about like, oh, well, I wanted to chat with, somebody on my website, visiting my website. And you're like, okay, well, do you have like a really defined decision tree? Can they go like one of 3 ways, and then there's 3 responses that are required? That's not Agentforce, right? That's not what Agentforce does. What Agentforce does is it chats in natural language with that person, and then it's able to query your entire knowledge base, right? For everything that you have in your knowledge base, and it can say, based on what this person is saying, it sounds like they need to understand this information that's stored in this, knowledge article from 2 years ago or something like that, right? And it's able to respond to them with that information like a human would, like an agent would have done, right? And so it's this really beautiful way to extend the capabilities of your organization in a conversational and relational way. I get excited about that because I think what that allows, as Erica said, what that allows health and human service organizations to do is it allows them to have their people focusing on the most mission critical activities, right? And actually reallocate resourcing and strategy to the most important things to do. Not that answering questions isn't helpful or important, but if you already have that knowledge, then, that isn't probably the best use of someone's time if the knowledge already exists. And this is a way to kind of bridge that gap. And there's a lot of use cases like that I'm really excited about. Think about that in terms of like donor relationships over time or communication preferences. This idea that you're able to start to figure out and infer things about this person and their intent, and then kind of provide the right experience to that person based on their experience and intent at scale. As a former digital marketer, it just really excites me for the future.
That brings up a good point. When we talked about AI readiness and having your data ready, that knowledge base is really a part of that data as well. So, we know that somebody could go to Google and ask them about your program, right? But the answer that they get may not be the one that you would like them to get, right? That's surfacing data that may not be vetted by you. It may not be, it may get you confused with another provider and provide information that's inaccurate or misleading. And so making sure that that agent is using that knowledge, the same knowledge that you would train a new staff member on. That's the way I like to think of it, right? The same way in which you wouldn't go tell your new staff member to go read your website or others' websites, right? You would want to give it more specific instruction. And that's true of the agents as well, to make sure that they're really representing your brand and your voice of your organization.
Yeah, it's really, really cool stuff. And I mean, certainly here at Provisio, we seem to be kind of at the forefront of this just because with Pacific Clinics, as you had mentioned, Erica, one of our really great partners were involved in this implementation of Agentforce. And I believe you said that they're the first nonprofits to actually begin harnessing it, right?
Correct. Yes, they were the first ones to purchase Agentforce on the nonprofit side. So it's really exciting. They are a very forward-looking organization. So.
All right. Well, lots and lots more to come, and we're going to be talking more about artificial intelligence in coming episodes, and in particular Agentforce. So stick around for that. Erica and John, thank you so much for joining this episode of Sparking Innovation.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. It's been great.
And if you are excited about the potential of AI for your organization, but you need some help developing a data strategy to get there, contact us at provisiopartners.com. You can also find our website in the show description. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to catch the next episode of Sparking Innovation. Thank you so much for listening.